Hello and welcome. I'm James Milan and I'm here with Ian Jackson, who is the Green Rainbow candidate for State Treasurer. Thanks for coming in to talk to us today.
Thank you.
We're going to start by reviewing the format of this interview. It will be a live-to-tape interview, and that means that there are no edits once we begin. There was no pre-screening of the questions, and the answers will be limited strictly to 2 minutes each. We'll start with a 1-minute opening statement from the candidate, and after the questions, we will conclude with a 1-minute closing statement. So, Mr. Jackson, we invite you to make a 1-minute opening statement.
What are your dreams? My son, who encouraged me to run, had dreams of graduating from college without incurring any debt. He took a job like many people. He found out that he was working more hours than he was getting paid. He got together with the students since it was a union job, as the United Auto Workers, and together they were able to negotiate enough wages so they could pay for their school. We should implement a pay-it-forward system like in Oregon that allows people to pay back their student debts based on their income rather than some fee set by the university.
Okay, thank you very much. We are now going to proceed right to the questions, and I'm sure I don't need to remind you, but you will have a limit of 2 minutes for answering each one. And the first one is a pair of questions. Why are you running for state treasurer, and what prepares you to serve in this capacity?
I'm running for state treasurer because I believe that the major parties aren't answering the questions of how do we have clean elections and get our message out cost efficiently rather than spending large sums of money. My qualifications are that I'm a software engineer. I graduated from Baylor University with a major in computer science and a minor in business administration. Computers are used throughout everything now. One of the jobs of treasurer, in fact, the first line item in the budget, maybe not the largest, deals with providing computer services to the Retired Teachers Association. Also, as you know, the lottery has a bunch of computer terminals that run it. So I believe with my technical knowledge, and of course, as many software engineers, a head for numbers, I believe that it's a good fit for my abilities.
Okay, thanks very much. What are the biggest challenges facing the Massachusetts economy? And as treasurer, what policies would you support to address these challenges? And lastly, how would you pay for them?
Okay. The biggest challenge to everyone is our aging infrastructure in our cities and towns. Back in the 80s, property taxes were skyrocketing. We had Prop 2.5 that to some degree has kept property taxes in line. There were promises made throughout different administrations to the amount of aid to local cities and towns. Unfortunately, no town that I'm aware of is saying that they're swimming in aid from the state. We need to work together to rebuild our infrastructure. One way that I envision doing that is through a public bank where we could pool our resources to make a banking system too good to fail rather than just too big with private Wall Street banks. Another way that I envision paying for it, I know it's not the most popular, but income inequity is a problem in this Commonwealth. I propose that we have a more progressive tax structure. Right now, according to Mass Budget, if you're on the lower ends, you pay 9% of your income in taxes. If you're at the extreme higher ends, it's only 6% of your income in taxes to the state. I believe we need to move to a progressive income tax. This could also be done without a constitutional amendment via increasing the exemptions.
Okay, thanks. And do you believe the state treasurer has been an aggressive watchdog for taxpayers? Please give 2 examples of new initiatives you would support around this if elected.
I believe he has done a good job at the pension fund, which that is one of the big question marks. We promised everyone that pension, the state workers. And if that isn't funded, he's done a great job at getting a good return on investment, which unfortunately still it's not rated as well, mainly because we have not funded it as much. I believe, as far as what I would like to see in that regard, I think I will try and pressure the legislature to fund the pension more fully. And that will bring up our rating on the pension. I think another thing that we need to really examine is things like the Boston Convention Center. I know it was passed, but is it really something that's going to help build our industries? My son is a researcher at Children's Hospital. He just recently returned from a trip to Atlanta. Many of the life science professionals choose where they have conferences based on weather and prefer warm locations. So I question whether that is the right place to invest our money. We need to invest in our roads and bridges to have a good infrastructure for everyone. Public transportation would be great, but that takes a long time in coming and building out in the proper way.
Mm-hmm. And what principles and values inform your perspective on state revenue and tax reform for both individuals and corporations?
Okay. Well, I believe that you should care for people and understand that some people do need extra help. And I'm a software engineer, so of course I'm at the higher end. But you also need to be nice to those people that are cleaning up for our businesses and probably reduce their burdens because they have families. Our corporations, I don't find them as people, but we also have to remember they employ people. And with fairness to everyone, you have to look at how much they're getting back and how much they're returning to society.
Okay, thanks. Do you support creating universal pre-K and making it free and accessible to any resident of Massachusetts?
Yes, I believe that you should be able to have education. Our working hours have changed, but we also need to recognize that maybe that's not the best environment for some of our children. So I think that there should be some options around it, and it shouldn't be necessary, mandatory. Mm-hmm. My father was sick when he was in first grade and had to repeat first grade and then made up for it in high school. I think we can, but we owe it to everyone as work has changed. It used to be that you'd be able to have one family member at home. Now there's much more to learn, and there's also not as much of an option for people to have one of the parents at home.
Okay, thanks. Do you support the repeal of casinos in Massachusetts? And if casinos do come to Massachusetts, how would you work with casino operators to continue driving local aid to cities and towns across the Commonwealth?
Well, I favor the repeal, which is yes on the question, which in the reverse logic of the way the system works. I believe that I could work with casinos to continue the aid. I think we need to look, repeal or no repeal, we need to look at the way we're aiding our cities and towns. We're aiding them primarily through the lottery, which is a game of chance. What if at some point people got tired of that game and decided instead of playing the lottery for a chance to get an 80% return, instead they'll save their money and buy a game of Risk or Monopoly and play that at home for family entertainment rather than using scratch tickets. So we also need to look at funding, and that's why I'm in favor of progressive income tax, to try and balance our books in other ways than through games of chance and leaving everything to luck.
Thanks. Some critics have labeled Massachusetts Taxachusetts. I'm sure you've heard that. Do you believe that the fees and taxes that are levied on individuals and corporations are appropriate? Or do these rates need to be reevaluated and redistributed? And if you can please be as specific as possible.
Well, they always need to be reevaluated. We've done some efforts. One thing is that the upper end pays less than the lower end of the income spectrum for individuals, the 6 and 9% that I referred to earlier. We've tried to attract businesses by cutting rates, but at the same time, we've had Fidelity take those tax breaks and then for business reasons still cut jobs. Now, is that the right way to spend taxpayers' money? Our auditor currently can't look at that. But we always need to be evaluating for fairness of structure. If some business wanted to relocate out to Springfield, why is it the casino industry gets all this special treatment but not some other industry?
Okay. And can you give us one example of an issue that you and your opponents agree on, and then 2 examples of issues on which you differ, and why your own positions represent the best interests of the Commonwealth?
Okay. I think we agree on fiscal education being important. I think all 3 of us believe that that's quite important, but that's a small percentage of the budget. It's 160 of the treasurer's million, and then 250 million grant that's available to local communities. One way that we differ, at least in enunciation, is progressive income tax. I think I'm rather vocal on that issue and set. Another is that I believe in a universal health care, which studies have shown will save 15% of administrative costs. I don't believe that either of my opponents are enunciating that as an issue to help save money for cities and towns.
Final question. What strategies would you use for working with members of other parties and those of opposing views? And what experience do you have implementing such strategies?
Okay. Well, I think first by trying to understand where they're coming from. I've worked in my church, which is a Baptist church, and like many denominations, is the saying, if you get two Baptists together, you get three opinions. I've been chair of church council, so as well as trustees and other boards, so I've had experience that you have people that have different views. You have the ones that don't want to spend any money, even if turn the heat on and they're sitting in the pews, they say, just get another jacket. Then you have other people that like having some heat. I've had experience at work as a software engineer. You have your customers that want everything right now perfect. Well, it's, as anybody that uses computer knows, it's rarely ever perfect. In fact, it's often a compromise to try and get it good enough to work.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the series of questions, and we now invite you to make a 1-minute closing statement.
Okay. We need to go forward in this Commonwealth. This year, I believe we have some different choices of the way candidates fund their campaigns. On one hand, you have candidates that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, in one case, over $1 million. On the other, you have someone using more modest means in order to get on the ballot and get elected. What do you want going forward? Do you want a treasurer that's a tightwad or someone that's going to spend lots of money to get elected? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we want to thank Mr. Jackson very much for coming in and participating in our conversation today. Please make your vote count by voting at the state election on November 4th. For Arlington Public News, this is James Milan. Thanks for joining us.